We now recognize our panel of witnesses. Mr. Russell George is the Treasury Inspector General for the Tax Administration. Mr. Douglas Schulman is the former Commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service. Ms. Lois Lerner is the Director of Exempt Organizations at the Internal Revenue Service. Mr. Neil S. Wolin is the Deputy Secretary at the Department of Treasury, and as I previously noted, essentially the report two of the Commissioner. Pursuant to the rules of the committee, all witnesses will be sworn. Would you please rise, raise your right hand to take the oath? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Let the record indicate all witnesses answered in the affirmative. Please take your seats. For all the witnesses, your entire opening statements will be placed in the record. We understand sometimes you're obligated to stay with your opening statement. If so, keep it within 5 minutes. If you'd like to use the time to either add to or to summarize, that can be very helpful for the members. Mr. George, you're up first. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Eisler, Ranking Member Cummings, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss our recent report concerning the Internal Revenue Service's treatment of groups that apply for tax-exempt status. As you noted, and as you are aware, Mr. Chairman, our audit was initiated based on concerns that you expressed due to taxpayer allegations that they were subjected to unfair treatment by the IRS. The three allegations considered during our review were proven true. The IRS targeted specific groups applying for tax-exempt status. It delayed the processing of these groups' applications and requested unnecessary information, as well as subjected these groups to special scrutiny. It is important to note that the IRS conducted an audit, that we, TIGTA, conducted an audit of the IRS and not an investigation. Pursuant to the Inspector General Act, TIGTA is authorized to conduct both audits as well as investigations in our oversight of IRS programs and operations. Audits are generally reviews of IRS programs designed to identify systemic problems and recommend corrective actions, whereas investigations are focused on a person or persons and are usually undertaken in response to reports or complaints of misconduct. Investigations may be criminal or administrative in nature and can result in referral for prosecution or referral for management for administrative action. Once again, the report we are discussing today is an audit of the IRS's processing of tax-exempt applications. It is not uncommon for audits to present specific issues that lead to additional reviews or investigations. The inappropriate criteria discussed in this audit were the IRS's targeting for review Tea Party and other organizations based on their names or policy positions, a practice started in 2012 and which was not fully corrected until May 2012. Actually, the practice was started in 2010 and not fully corrected until May of 2012. These criteria were inappropriate in that they did not focus on tax-exempt laws and Treasury regulations. They remained in effect for approximately 18 months. The organization selected for review for significant political campaign intervention experienced substantial delays in the processing of their applications. In addition, many of these organizations received requests for unnecessary information, including lists of donors. In closing, our overall assessment is that the IRS demonstrated poor judgment and gross mismanagement in the implementation of this program. The substantiated allegations are troubling and raise many questions. Chairman Eisler, Ranking Member Cummings, members of the committee, thank you for the invitation to appear.
Thank you. Mr. Schulman.
Chairman Issa, Ranking Member Cummings, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform to discuss the Treasury Inspector General's findings. I was the Commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service from March 2008 until November 2012. And during that time, the agency was called upon to tackle a number of challenges. The agency played a key role in stimulus and economic recovery efforts during the economic downturn, aggressively addressed offshore tax evasion, and completed a major modernization of its core technology database. The agency also continued to deliver on its core mission of collecting the revenue to fund the government. The IRS is a major operation with more than 90,000 employees who work on issues ranging from processing individual tax returns to building complex technology, to ensuring compliance with businesses, to educating the public about tax law changes, to administering a very complex set of rules governing tax-exempt organizations. I've now read the Treasury Inspector General's report. I was dismayed and saddened to read the Inspector General's conclusions that actions had been taken creating the appearance that the service was not acting as it should have. That is, as a non-political, non-partisan agency. Utilizing a list with keywords to select applicants for review based on organizations' names or policy positions is, in my view, inappropriate and damaging. The IRS serves a critical function for our nation. It collects the taxes necessary to run the government. Because of this important responsibility, the IRS must administer and must be perceived to administer our tax laws fairly and impartially. Given the challenges that the agency faces, it does its job in an admirable way the great majority of the time. And the men and women of the IRS are hardworking, honest public servants. While the Inspector General's report did not indicate that there was any political motivation involved, the actions outlined in the report have justifiably led to questions about the fairness of the approach taken here. The effect is bad for the agency and bad for the American taxpayer. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Ms. Lerner, I note that you have not provided a written testimony for the committee. Do you wish to make an opening statement?
Yes, sir, I do.
Please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Lois Lerner, and I'm the Director of Exempt Organizations at the Internal Revenue Service. I have been a government employee for over 34 years. I initially practiced law at the Department of Justice and later at the Federal Election Commission. In 2001, I moved to the IRS to work in the Exempt Organizations Office. And in 2006, I was promoted to be the director of that office. Exempt Organizations oversees about 1.6 million tax-exempt organizations and processes over 60,000 applications for tax exemption every year. As director, I'm responsible for about 900 employees nationwide and administer a budget of almost $100 million. My professional career has been devoted to fulfilling responsibilities of the agencies for which I have worked, and I am very proud of the work that I have done in government. On May 14th, the Treasury Inspector General released a report finding that the Exempt Organizations Field Office in Cincinnati, Ohio, used inappropriate criteria to identify for further review applications from organizations that plan to engage in political activity, which may mean that they did not qualify for tax exemption. On that same day, the Department of Justice launched an investigation into the matters described in the Inspector General's report. In addition, members of this committee have accused me of providing false information when I responded to questions about the IRS processing of applications for tax exemption. I have not done anything wrong. I have not broken any laws. I have not violated any IRS rules or regulations, and I have not provided false information to this or any other congressional committee. And while I would very much like to answer the committee's questions today, I've been advised by my counsel to assert my constitutional right not to testify or answer questions related to the subject matter of this hearing. After very careful consideration, I've decided to follow my counsel's advice and not testify or answer any of the questions today. Because I'm asserting my right not to testify, I know that some people will assume that I've done something wrong. I have not. One of the basic functions of the Fifth Amendment is to protect innocent individuals, and that is the protection I'm invoking today. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Ms. Lerner, earlier, the ranking member made me aware of a response we have that is purported to come from you in regards to questions that the IG asked during his investigation. Can we have you authenticate simply the questions and answers previously given to the Inspector General?
I don't know what that is. I'd have to look at it.
Okay. Would you please make it available to the witness?
This appears to be my response.
So it's your testimony that, as far as your recollection, that is your response.
That's correct.
Ms. Lerner, the topic of today's hearing is the IRS improper targeting of certain groups for additional scrutiny regarding their application for tax-exempt status. As Director of Exempt Organizations of the Tax-Exempt and Government Entities Division of the IRS, you are uniquely positioned to provide testimony to help this committee better understand how and why the IRS targeted these groups. To that end, I must ask you to reconsider, particularly in light of the fact that you have given not once but twice testimony before this committee under oath this morning. You have made an opening statement in which you made assertions of your innocence, assertions you did nothing wrong, assertions you broke no laws or rules. Additionally, you have authenticated earlier answers to the IG. At this point, I believe you have not asserted your rights, but in fact have effectively waived your rights. Would you please seek counsel for further guidance on this matter while we wait?
I will not answer any questions or testify about the subject matter of this committee's meeting.
We will take your refusal as a refusal to testify. The witness and counsel are dismissed. The gentleman will state a point of order. Please wait.
Mr. Isa, Mr. Cummings just said we should run this like a courtroom, and I agree with him. She just testified. She just waived her Fifth Amendment right to privilege. You don't get to tell your side of the story and then not be subjected to cross-examination. That's not the way it works. She waived her right to Fifth Amendment privilege by issuing an opening statement. She ought to stand here and answer our questions.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Cummings.
I first of all, with all respect for my good friend, Mr. Gowdy, I said I'd like to see it run like a federal court. Unfortunately, this is not a federal court, and she does have a right, and I think, and we have to adhere to that.
Thank you. We'll pause for a moment. Ms. Lerner, I'll ask you just a couple of additional questions. Is it possible that we could narrow the scope of questions and that there are some areas that you would be able to answer any questions on here today?
I will not answer any questions or testify today.
Ms. Lerner, would you be willing to answer questions specifically related to the earlier statements made under oath before this committee?
I decline to answer that question for the reasons I've already given.
For this reason, I have no choice but to excuse the witness, subject to recall after we seek specific counsel on the questions of whether or not the constitutional right of the Fifth Amendment has been properly waived. Notwithstanding that, in consultation with the Department of Justice as to whether or not limited or use immunity could be negotiated, the witness and counsel are dismissed. Now, the clerk will please rearrange the seating.